Ask Australians what issues they want government to tackle, and road congestion is second only to health. Hardly surprising, none of us want to be stuck in traffic day after day. So, how do we go about fixing this before the lifestyle Australia is famous for is a distant memory? What's the answer? Well, let's start by looking at the problem. So here we have some of the world's leading cities and their current congestion levels. Now that's population on the x-axis and congestion on the y-axis. Now Moscow, right here at the top, is a rating of 74%. It's easily one of the most congested cities in the world. And that rating means that for every day, motors are sitting in traffic for 74% longer than if the traffic was free-flowing. Drivers in Moscow spend 128 hours. That's more than 3 working weeks sitting in traffic every year. The dot right here represents Beijing, which is so gridlocked that roadworks caused a traffic jam stretching 100 kilometers, which lasted for more than a week. Here's London, LA, Rome, big cities with particularly high congestion levels between 30 and 40%. So how do our major capital cities compare? Sydney's right here with 34%. It's right up there with London and LA, cities that are 2 and 3 times the size of Sydney. Melbourne's not far behind, looking at 27%, which means it tops New York, coming in at 26%. And Brisbane's here at 23%, just ahead of Chicago and Houston. Now, in practical terms, these ratings mean Sydney-siders spend 89 hours a year in congestion, and Melburnians sit in traffic for 76 hours. Every year, when The Economist releases its City Livability Index, we're proud to see Sydney and Melbourne up there in the top 10. But how realistic are these rankings when transport infrastructure accounts for less than 6% of the city's total livability score? That weighting seems incredibly low given the urban spread of our cities that makes us so reliant on the transport network. But if you think we have issues now, let's look ahead a few years. Melbourne's population is expected to double to almost 8 million by 2050, and Sydney is expected to grow about the same size. That's almost a 100% increase on our current population levels in both Melbourne and Sydney. Compare that to the American cities over the next 30 years. New York is expected to grow by just over 8%, Los Angeles by 12%, and Chicago at around 16%. That's a fraction of the growth we're looking at here in Australia. But our population is not only growing, it's getting older, and that's going to put unprecedented demands on the public purse. Right now, 25% of the federal budget is spent on health, age-related pensions, and care. By 2050, this will increase to almost half of the budget, leaving areas like infrastructure scrambling for funds. This is an enormous issue because we're already spending more on roads than we're raising from road-related taxes, fuel excise, vehicle registration, and license fees. In 2013, the government and the private sector spent about $25 billion on road infrastructure, while road-related taxes and charges raised about $18 billion in funding. Now that is a $6.5 billion shortfall in that year alone. No question, our funding system has outlived its usefulness, but it's much worse than that. It is unfair and unsustainable. And here's an example of why it's so unfair. Recently, I bought a new car. It's a fully electric i3, so I don't pay for petrol. This means I pay annual registration and my driver's license fee, but I do not contribute to the federal funding pool for infrastructure through fuel excise. Now, if I was driving a current model petrol car, I'd be contributing just over $400 in excise a year. And if I was driving a 1990 sedan that's less fuel efficient, I'd be contributing about $800 a year. So I'm contributing nothing to fuel excise, while the 1990 sedan driver is contributing $800 a year while driving the same distance. That's just not fair. It's also unsustainable because technology will continue to drive us to more fuel-efficient cars, which is great for the environment, but disastrous for our current funding system. So where do we go from here? Most of the experts say we need a funding system that is fair, sustainable, and built on a principle where those who benefit pay. And going by the results of our independent survey, Australians, you agree. 66% of the people that we asked said they would prefer a user-pay system over a flat fee arrangement. Now the key reason, Australians value being able to choose what they pay for, especially if it improves their quality of life. User pays in transport is not a new concept. For instance, in our sector roads, there are various funding models in use or being trialed around the world, but nothing's being done here in Australia. To make any progress, we need to get busy and find out what suits Australia best. And we here at Transurban, we're taking that next step. Over the next year, we're undertaking a voluntary simulation exercise in Melbourne to explore different user pays models. Some of the options will include a distance-based charge, an annual fixed cost on expected kilometers, and a price per trip or access charge. We'll also explore time of day pricing and a charge for entering the CBD. We'll compare these various models with the current system and assess drivers' preferences. We look forward to sharing the results with you over the coming year. It's time to go beyond the theory. If we continue down the same path, Melbourne will be looking at congestion levels around 65% by 2050. This means drivers will be sitting in traffic for more than 120 hours a year. Sydney will face congestion of 75%, ahead of today's Moscow. Or we can choose a sustainable system and shift the dial on our congestion levels, ensuring our cities really are the most livable in the world.